Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. The new Yogi Berra baseball documentary, It Ain't Over, opens in DC area movie theaters this Friday. I spoke to director Sean Mullen and executive producer Lindsay Berra about honoring her grandfather.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Hey there.
Thanks so much for doing this. We'll start with Lindsay, since you're the granddaughter. what inspired you to finally do a doc on your grandfather? Had many been made before, or is this sort of like the first?
No, this is the first, and I have to give full credit to our producer, Peter Soboloff. In the summer of 2018, in his words, he was dragged by his wife to go see the Mr. Rogers documentary, and he ended up loving it. And the next day was my grandfather's museum golf outing, and he saw my dad and uncles and said, "Hey, how come there's no Mr. Rogers documentary, but about your father?" And they said, "Well, no one's ever made one." And he said, "Well, can I?" And he had produced a movie previously that was directed by Sean, our director. And he introduced Sean to my dad and uncles. And like my grandfather, Sean is an Army veteran and an athlete. He played rugby at West Point, and my dad and uncles loved him immediately. And that was kind of how the ball got rolling. And then I got involved because I started peppering Sean with texts and emails like, "You've got to interview Vin Scully and Bobby Richardson and Tony Kubek and Audrey Gargiola and all these people who played with my grandpa that you don't know because you're a Hollywood person. So you need my help. Let me help you."
Wow, I love that. And of course, this would be inspired by the Mr. Rogers documentary. Of course. That I assume you're talking about Won't You Be My Neighbor, the 2018 one by Morgan Neville.
Yes.
Gosh, that was such a great movie. Such a great movie, especially the end. Remember when they have all the interviewees in the movie? They like at the very end, there's like a montage where they're like, sit quietly and think about those people and mentors that inspired you. And I was almost coming to tears watching that thing. All right. Well, thanks so much. All right, let's get Sean in here. So Sean, talk about the other end of that then, them contacting you and what was your prior knowledge of Yogi Berra before you even, got brought in to do this project? I assume you knew, some of the Yogiisms and, his Yankee greatness, but, what was your general impression beforehand?
Yeah, I mean, I knew, a little bit about him. I think I knew kind of what the majority of kind of what the general public knew about him, really. I knew that he was a catcher for the Yankees, and, he was this tough guy with these funny sayings. I mean, I knew he had 10 rings. I mean, I grew up a sports fan, and actually I grew up as a young kid rooting for the Yankees because of Don Mattingly. I was originally from Indiana. So, I knew, I think, what the general public knew, but I think, I thought he was a good player. I didn't know he was such a great player. And I think that's one of the things we really look to kind of rectify in this documentary, is just show everybody how great he was as a ball player. But it turns out as amazing of a ball player as he was even a better person. And so that really kind of shines through in this film.
All right, I want to unpack both of those, how great he was as a ball player and, then how great of a person he was. And so I'll throw, we'll follow up with Sean for the ball player stuff. And then Lindsay, I'll throw the, the off the field stuff to you because you're a family member. All right. So Sean, remind us, and I'm sure some of the Yankee greats you interview in this documentary, remind us some of the amazing, on field stats and accomplishments, with MVPs and all-star games and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, 3 MVPs, an all-star, 18-time all-star, just really incredible. The big thing on the field is he hardly ever struck out. I mean, in 1950, for example, he batted .322 with 124 RBIs and 28 home runs and 656 plate appearances and 12 strikeouts, which is just insane. I mean, to think about somebody doing that today is ridiculous. One stat that I like to tell people that's not in the film is he is one of only 2 players in the history of baseball to finish in the top 4 of MVP voting 7 years in a row, which is a very highly sustained level of excellence for 7 consecutive years. It's Yogi Berra and Mike Trout. And then I think Lindsay's favorite stat is he's one of only 2 ball players to turn to a stat machine here. He's only one of 2 ball players to have more than 350 home runs and less than 450 strikeouts. So it's
and the other one is Joe DiMaggio. People don't often put grandpa in the same breath as Joe DiMaggio, but he's there, right there.
Absolutely. Or Mike
maybe
Trout.
They should,
Yeah.
Maybe they should.
Absolutely.
Wow. And of course, and we have to mention too, the only one to ever catch a perfect game in the World Series, right?
Yeah, grandpa always used to say it ain't been done before and it ain't been done since.
Yes, Don
Yeah.
Larson in 1956 pitched that, but Yogi Berra was the glove catching and the fingers signaling all the pitches that entire game. That's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah, I mean, all the stats I listed there were mainly offensive stats, but he was incredible behind the plate. Yes, he had a 148 game errorless streak, which was incredible. He caught both ends of a double header 117 times. For that Larson perfect game in 56, he called all 97 pitches. Larson just kind of sort of put his fate in Yogi's hands. So yeah, I mean, behind the plate, he was just absolutely a maestro.
And what is some of the, rattle off some of the Yankee greats that you interview, and if you can think off the top of your head, some of the the adoring things they were saying about Yogi.
It was really important to me to get as many guys in the documentary who had seen Grandpa play or played with Grandpa. So we have his teammates, Bobby Richardson, Tony Kubek, Hector Lopez, and Ralph Terry. We have Vin Scully, the legendary Dodgers broadcaster. He was the Dodgers broadcaster for most of Grandpa's career, and they played many, many World Series against the Dodgers. Roger Angel was a reporter for the New Yorker who started covering New York baseball when he got out of World War II. So he covered Grandpa from the moment he stepped on the field until he got off of it. We have some contemporary Yankee folks. More contemporary anyway. Joe Torre, Mariano Rivera, Willie Randolph, Derek Jeter, Nick Swisher, some folks who were coached by and mentored by my grandpa Yogi. It's a really amazing cast of characters. You're going to hear a lot of great voices in the film.
I love it. And you mentioned Billy Crystal too, right? The ultimate Yankee fan.
Yeah, I didn't, but there you go. Billy Crystal is also in the film, and he is terrific. Sean has a 90-minute interview with Billy Crystal that could be a movie by itself.
Absolutely.
I can only imagine. That's fantastic. All right. Well, so that's sort of the on-field side of it, of course, Baseball Hall of Fame in 1972 and number 8 retired, all that stuff. That's like a murderer's row of retired numbers from 2 to 8 or 9 or whatever it is up to now. But yeah, but now let's pivot real quick. We're short on time, but to some of the off-field accomplishments. Lindsay, tell us about your grandfather as a man. And a lot of people might not know he was in the Navy, like on D-Day.
So I always say that Grandpa would have been an amazing human being, even if he never set foot on a baseball field. He was a first-generation Italian immigrant. He grew up on the Hill in St. Louis, Missouri, very poor, had to quit school in the 8th grade to help provide for his family. He would tell you that all of his older brothers, all 3 of them, were better ball players than he was, but they all had to work. And by the time it got down to Grandpa, they convinced my great-grandfather to give one of them a chance. So he comes from these very humble beginnings. He has he's playing for the Norfolk Tars in Virginia, and World War II is happening, and he literally walks over to the naval base and enlists before he has a chance to be drafted into the Navy. Wow. And he ends up on an LCSS, Landing Craft Support Small, which was one of the rocket boats. He was a machine gunner's assistant providing cover fire for our troops going ashore on Omaha Beach during the D-Day invasion. And then he came home. He was very lucky to come home, and he knew it when so many other men did not. And I do think that that's one of the things that made my grandfather such a tremendous baseball player. The perspective you gain from going through a real life or death situation, hitting in the bottom of the 9th with the bases loaded and 2 outs. He only saw that as opportunity. That wasn't pressure after what he'd already been through. But then he went on to manage. He had this beautiful 65-year love affair with my Grammy Carmen that really takes center stage in the documentary. And I'm telling you, if you're not a baseball fan, this love story is going to get you. You don't have to be a sports fan to enjoy this film. And he was a great father, a wonderful grandfather. And it really just goes into him as a human. It's a human story. And I think there's something in it for everyone.
Oh, an amazing life. Even like you said, even if baseball was never a part of the life, and it is a huge piece, but even without that, there's so much, great material here, family wise. All right. Well, final seconds, the pop culture impact. All of us remember the Yogiisms. We've probably quoted them without even knowing that your grandfather originated them. A lot of them. Remind our listeners some of the most famous ones, including, one became a title for the friggin' doc.
And the title of the doc is "It Ain't Over," which comes from probably his most famous saying, "It ain't over till it's over." But when you come to a fork in the road, take it. Nobody goes there anymore. It's too crowded. It's deja vu all over again. My favorites are the existential ones. If the world were perfect, it wouldn't be. The future ain't what it used to be. Sean has a few too.
Yeah, I like he was driving one time and Carm was like, "Hey, we're lost." He's like, "Yeah, but we're making great time."
It's just those turns of phrases, or what's the other one? Baseball is 90% mental and the other half is physical.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I always
good.
thought that record would stand until it was broken. Like, why is it? What's the trick of it? Do you think we love them because they're kind of zany and almost contradictory sometimes?
I think what's so great about them is that they might seem silly on the surface, but if you're willing to look past that initial silliness and be okay with the fact that he doesn't use the words you would like him or expect him to use to explain a certain thing, they really are very profound and kind of genius. And I mean, I use them in my everyday life all the time.
Yeah, what is the phrase? Deceptively profound or whatever it is, or deceptively genius. I can't remember which way it is. And I guess final thing was Yogi Berra, the character Hanna-Barbera, was it based on him? Was that ever proven? Didn't he try to sue Hanna-Barbera over it one time or something?
We go into that in the doc in depth. Yes, it was it was modeled after my grandpa Yogi for sure.
There's no coincidence that in 1958, at the height of Yogi Berra's fame, Hanna-Barbera comes out with a cartoon called Yogi Bear, about a bumbling, nice guy. Yeah, no, it's absolutely based on him, but yeah, there was no way to prove it, and he didn't copyright his name. So we get into that in the doc a little bit.
Wow, smarter than the average catcher, I guess. Well, everyone, pack your picnic baskets and head to the theaters. I believe it's playing. It's this Friday in DC. I think maybe Bethesda. I think there's a Virginia location. We'll link to it on the website. But thank you so much for joining us. It's called It Ain't Over. And this was so much fun to talk with you. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much for having us. Go to the movies, everybody.
Yeah, please. Thanks so much.
All right. This interview ain't over till it's over. And it's now. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.